And welcome to the show. It is 3:07 p.m. here on the East Coast. You're against the wall at the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm your host, James Freeland. Today on the show, Karen Kwiatkowski. Now, I first knew her as an activist and an author, but later on found out that she was retired Air Force lieutenant, worked for the National Security Lieutenant Colonel. Pardon me. Yes, worked for the National Security Agency. Now, we talked. You wondered maybe if we'd have 2 hours worth of stuff, but I couldn't get past the insider notes from the Pentagon. We could spend 2 hours just talking about the neocons and the Iraq War. So I don't think there's going to be any shortage of things to talk about. You've written many, many articles for Lou Rockwell, and also running for Congress in the 6th District in Virginia. Karen, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. Look forward to talking with you.
Yeah, now, I guess we should just start by mentioning that you are running for Congress and how people could get a hold of you to support you. Or
Sure. Yep. I'm running for Congress in the Republican primary here that we're having on June 12th. So it's only 10 days away, or a little bit less maybe. Here in 6th District of Virginia, that's Upper Shenandoah Valley, Front Royal to Roanoke it's a north-south kind of shaped district, and we are very, very conservative. We're very constitutional, and our current representative for 20 years has been Bob Goodlatte. And Bob Goodlatte is not a usually well-known guy, but he was kind of the author of SOPA. He introduced SOPA out of his subcommittee, the Stop Online Piracy Act.
Yeah,
he is responsible for some years ago the UGIA Act, which put a lot of internet gamblers, internet poker players, I should say, specifically poker players, put a bunch of those guys out of business. He's very much a manipulator of regulation. He's a regulator. He is a Republican, but he's voted 13 times to raise the debt ceiling. He voted to fund Obamacare 3 times. He's kind of a spender. Just an awful guy.
So in other words, he's a big government shill.
He's a big government shill, absolutely. And he doesn't really represent the thinking of about 75 or 80% of the people here in the 6th District. I mean, we are conservatives. Our Democrats are more conservative than many Republicans around the country. So we're conservative, but we like our civil liberties. We like our freedom, and we're mountain people. We live up here in the Shenandoah Valley. I mean, this is who we are, and Bob is not who we are. So I'm running in the Republican primary. Website to check us out, look at our issues and that kind of thing is KarenKforCongress.com, KarenKFOR Congress.com. You can also call our phone number, and I'm going to give it out here. It rings at my campaign manager's desk, but she's
great. She got right a hold of you for me.
That's right. She's absolutely fantastic. Lisa McCumsey is her name. She's doing a wonderful job, has done a wonderful job throughout this whole process. And the number to call is easy to remember. It's 540-440-1776. So that's our phone number, website, KarenKforCongress.com. And again, 10 days away from the June 12th primary. We don't have our own polling. We have some polling that shows we're doing okay. It doesn't show Bob's leading. What our polling shows us is that there's a lot of undecideds. What Bob's polling shows him is that he's in big trouble. We know this from the way he's behaving. He has refused to debate He is selling. He just did a big mailer. He spent almost $1 million. He will have spent $1 million on this primary by the time it's done. The latest thing that he sent was a glossy 4-page or fold-out mailer to every household in the district, about 500,000 households. He sent this mailer out, and he called himself a constitutional conservative. Well, of course, I'm running as a constitutional conservative, so we really take it as a great honor that Bob wants to be like us, because that's what the people want. The people want constitutional conservatism. Now, I don't think Bob can change his stripes in 10 days, but, this is what we're running. This is what we're talking about, and it's a beautiful conversation, I have to tell you, as we go around. People, they are concerned about the state of our republic. They know that Washington can't be trusted. They know these Congress people that have been up there forever are sellouts and shills. They know it. They want to do something about it, and we're giving them a little thing that they can do, and that's to elect me as the Republican nominee. And, of course, it's a Republican district. It is a very secure Republican district. So if I'm elected on Tuesday the 12th, we'll go forward, and I'll join the Ron Paul Brigade in Congress.
Absolutely.
I mean, I will join AMASH and a bunch of other folks, and Mike Lee and Rand in the Senate, and we will be doing our thing and fighting a good fight. I'm endorsed by the Republican Liberty Caucus, both the national and, of course, the state of Virginia. So that's where we hope to be, and that's what we hope to do, is to fight this fight. And, you mentioned I'm in the military. I was in the military. I don't know if that made me tough or not. It probably just gave me some good experiences. But let me tell you, we're fighting this thing to win it. I'll tell you that right now.
There's not much of a choice. If I was going to ask both of you questions, I'd ask you questions like, how do you feel about habeas corpus? How do you feel about due process? And I can just imagine what his answers would be. So I guess it wouldn't be fair to say that. So, but over the last couple of weeks, I've just been poking around some of the things that you've written, and it was just so easy. I could just jot down words, And so let's talk about habeas corpus and due process for a second, because for a constitutional republic, those are key.
Yes, exactly. Well, that and the Second Amendment, to protect yourself from government. I mean, habeas corpus and to have the body, to have evidence against you that is concrete and independently verified, that is your defense against overweening government. That's your defense against the king. These are critical things. We were at actually, it was a Republican meeting just yesterday. The all the top Republicans in the 6th District meet quarterly, and their quarterly meeting was yesterday. One of the guys during one of the breaks came up to me and he said, "You know what? We talk about the Constitution, and it's good. But he said the most important part of it's the Bill of Rights, and it is, and especially this day and age, the most important part is the Bill of Rights. And if you go to those first 10 amendments, they absolutely just read them kind of independently. They frame the powers that are held by the people, granted by God, held by the people, and to be defended at every point against the state's intrusion and incursion on those. I mean, even 9th and 10th Amendments talking about the rights of the lower level organizations, the rights of the states and the people. These are critical ideas. But I believe that the Bill of Rights is an alien document to most of the people in Washington, D.C., except for those in the Republican Liberty Caucus, the Ron Paul people, the people that like Walter Jones, who have really thought very deeply about their role as defenders of the Constitution and as representatives. The rest of them, I don't think they understand what's in the Bill of Rights. And look at the Amash Amendment. Bob Goodlatte voted to keep in the NDAA, to retain in the language of this law the ability of the president to seize people, to detain them without charges indefinitely forever in a military brig.
With the military.
Bob thought that was a good idea. Our own representative, who is a Republican, voted against 93 other Republicans. He thought that was a great idea. Yeah, let's let the president have that power. Under what, on what planet is that part of a republic? I don't know.
It's not. It's actually, if you look at it like this, as though the seat of the president is almost, the kingdom, the king, because if you look over the last 30 years with all the executive orders, with the different legislation that's come out, with the the president really can pretty much just, and you know it for a fact, due to the neocons, with what they did, they can bypass Congress essentially now. And the president has way more power than one man was ever meant to have here in this constitutional republic of the United States. And the key to that is going to have to be states' rights. 1, 2, people have to put forth effort in their government, and that includes us right down to the local level. If we don't want big government, then we have to become locally active. We'll be right back after this break, Karen. We will have no shortage of things to talk about right after this break. Karen Kwiatkowski, KarenK4Congress.com.
When you're violent in the neighborhood and you have to fade your strap, cause it's like that. That's Uncle Sam's curse. If you're a rebel.
Welcome back to the show. Before the break, actually during the break, we were talking. We both actually live in farm country, and so before we go into anything else, let's talk a little bit about some of the things we could do to. You mentioned ethanol. Let's talk about a couple of things that we might be able to do locally to help the farmers, to help them. I mean, where I come from, the only farmers that can exist are the one. I mean, they are financed to their teeth. It seems like each year they got to take out these huge loans, to service the debt they already have. And anytime a field comes up, you should see it, Karen, up here. If a lot comes up, a cornfield or a lot that had previously been leased by another farmer comes up, it's a mad rush, and they're ruthless to get that. You have to constantly expand to grow this corn. And there's better ways. There's better ways to manage the land, including the crops and ethanol, specifically.
The whole thing with corn, I don't know how technical people want to get, but corn, as we all know, even if we have just a home garden and we grow sweet corn, corn sucks nutrients out of the soil and takes fertilizer.
Yep.
When we grow corn, it is a fossil fuel intensive process, the way that we grow corn in this country. 40% of our corn in this country is burned up and it's put into our engines, and that's due to ethanol subsidies. It's due to the renewable fuels standard mandates, to E10 and soon to be E15. And Bob Goodlatte, of course, my opponent, he loves that stuff. He thinks it's great. He voted for the 2005 Energy Act. He supports RFS stuff. He is looking to modify the Renewable Fuel Standards program to make it even more convoluted and more susceptible to lobbying pressures and speculation even. But he doesn't care about any of that. He's not a farmer. Right. Even though he represents 4 of the 5 biggest agricultural counties in Virginia, he's not a farmer. Corn is not the biggest thing we grow out here. In the 6th District of Virginia, we consume corn. We have poultry farms, chickens and turkeys and broilers. We have cattle. We don't finish as many cattle as we ought to, but we grow and produce cattle. We used to have hogs. Can't afford to feed them. Corn's too high. Why is corn too high? Because the government has picked winners and losers and has created an artificial market through this whole ethanol thing. And let me tell you, environmentally, a lot of times people say, oh, conservatives, libertarians, you don't have a good solution on the environment. Well, let me tell you, ethanol takes nearly as much energy to create in this country from corn anyway. There's other things you can make it from, but if you take corn ethanol, it takes almost as much energy to make it as it does as the energy you get, the BTUs you get when you burn that stuff.
Yeah, when you talk about the fertilizers and the pesticides that you use being...
That's exactly right. And those fertilizers and pesticides, which most people don't seem to understand, don't get because they're not farmers, only a few people are farmers in this country, the fertilizers, the pesticides, and the mechanization and the chemicals that are used to produce that corn come from the oil industry. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, it's just nuts. They think we're burning cleaner fuel. the net result for this country is equal in terms of burning fossil fuels, and pollution-wise, it's the same. Plus, we're doing ethanol. We're not buying up the fuel. It's being used elsewhere, and those guys are burning it and creating those so-called carbons that they're all worried about. You know, the carbon pollution that everybody says, oh, ethanol is going to make the air cleaner. Well, not at all. Not on the whole planet, and not even in this country.
Well,
So,
the problem is one of the solutions means taking control away from the logging and the timber industry and also the oil industry and growing hemp on an industrial level nationwide, around the world.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I know you're not going to, that's not an official stance for on your campaign, but, you know, that's just something I throw in there because it's all natural and it has nothing to do with drugs.
No, it doesn't. And I'll tell you the thing about hemp. You know, a lot of the people, the cash crop for here in the western part of Virginia for many, many years, cash crop was tobacco. And tobacco is highly regulated. And, you know, in fact, at this point, we don't hardly grow any tobacco in this country because of government regulations. We import our tobacco from the Caribbean and elsewhere, South America. We don't do a lot of tobacco growing, but back in the day, tobacco was the cash crop. Well, that's been eliminated largely through government manipulation of the marketplace and government policy and taxes and controls on agricultural production. So we don't do tobacco anymore, and there is no cash crop that people can use here. No. One of the things that South Dakota, I believe it is, South or North Dakota, they have gotten permission, I guess, and state permission certainly, to grow grow hemp for fiber, and also for hemp seed and hemp seed oil and health purposes. And certainly it's not marijuana, it's hemp.
No, and that's only for export. We need to grow the industry around it too, Karen, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. Oh my gosh. There was somebody talking to me.
Can you imagine? I live on a stream that had no less than 4 mills, water-powered textile mills on it, and including a paper mill right across the street from me. Now, I could just imagine if we could grow hemp here, they'd still that paper mill'd probably still be going. That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's just, you know, what it is Washington. And guys like Bob Goodlatte, who for many years chaired the Agricultural Committee in the House. He sits on that committee now. He's not the chair anymore. But people like him who don't understand agriculture but are really easy to be lobbied and paid for, basically bought and paid for by some of these larger industries. These guys are making our decisions for us out of Washington. Well, that's just terrible. It's outrageous that they would do that. It's wrong. It's not part of the vision the founders had. It doesn't make any sense. It costs us money. It drives jobs overseas. You know, I'll tell you, it turns my stomach when I hear somebody from government tell me he's going to do something about jobs. I'm like, you guys are the reason we don't have jobs. You know, why don't you just back off and get out of our way? You know, leave us alone, and maybe prosperity would come back to this country.
Yeah, what are your views on the UN's Agenda 21 and the local governments for sustainability, otherwise known as ICLEI?
That's so funny. Well, actually, if you go to our website, KarenK4Congress.com, we do have Agenda 21 as an issue area, and my views, of course, are all negative on Agenda 21. So first off, I'm not a big fan of the UN, and I never have been a fan of the UN.
Get us out, please.
And for people that, I guess your audience probably knows pretty much about Agenda 21, but just as a quick summary, 1992, George Herbert Walker Bush signed on to a meeting down in Rio, I guess, and they had a big plan with many chapters called Agenda 21, and it's an economic development and environmental approach by a bunch of bureaucrats, global bureaucrats, who feel that if we could only create the world in our own image or in our own vision and force everybody to do exactly what we say, then everything would be better. The environment would be better. The economy would run more smoothly. I mean, this is the fatal conceit that Hayek talked about. I mean, it is indeed Agenda 21. That's in 3 words, you would say, what is Agenda 21? It is the fatal conceit. It is the book of the fatal conceit. Okay, that Hayek wrote about, the fatal conceit of socialism, that people in a hierarchical system can somehow know what is best for all other people in the world, all uses of private property, and all aspects of free trade. All those should be managed by these super wise bureaucrats. Well,
unelected.
Yeah, unelected. Well, anyway, yeah, I totally disagree with it, and I have a lot of issues with it. And let me tell you this, I'm glad you brought this up. This is something I found out as part of my campaign in the 6th District of Virginia. Now I knew about Agenda 21, but I've become more aware of some of the specifics here and how it applies to us, because certainly that it makes its way in very local aspects. You know, the grants and international money comes in to kind of support certain Agenda 21 programs in these local communities, and people say, "Oh, free money, that sounds good." Not realizing.
Yeah, ICLEI, man,
That's right.
It's everywhere.
It sure is. Well, we have.
All right, Karen, just for a second, we're going to have to take a break here right after this break.
I'm going to tell you a little something very interesting about 6th District in Ickley here when we come back.
Okay, when we come back, stay tuned. This is the Orion Talk Radio Network. Oh, yeah. Welcome back to Against the Wall here at the Orion Talk Radio Network, Micro 1650 AM, Southern Niagara County, Tonawanda. Big shot of the milliwatt. I'd like to welcome everybody from D Program. That's the letter D, program.net. All good friends of mine. Now, before the break, Karen, you were gonna mention something about Ickley in the 6th District. Let's hear it.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you go to Ickley's website, I think it's Ickley's website. It's under, it tracks, where these organizations are.
Ickley.org.
Yep, because see, they're really proud of what they're doing. I mean, at the local level, most people who even take Ickley money or participate in these things, they really don't realize it's part of a more of a global agenda. They don't really tie it to the UN really, and they don't really see the big picture, and that's fine. That's fine. Now, what concerned me and what was shocking, and I found this out as part of the campaign as I was researching Ickley and some other things. In the 6th District of Virginia, there's 11 different congressional districts in the state of Virginia, but we have, but the 6th District has 1/3 of all of the Ickley community partner states, all the Ickley partner cities and counties. We have 1/3 of them, even though we are only 1/11 of the state's population. Now that to me says something. Now Bob Goodlatte's position on Agenda 21 is basically he doesn't know what it is. People have asked him, and he seems, that's not really a factor. Well, yes, it is a factor, and it is a huge factor. We are overwhelmingly involved with Ickley in the 6th District, and I'm not really sure we should be, but that's facts as they are, and you can count up the numbers right there. In fact, it's on our issue page. You don't have to count the numbers up. You can go to our website, KarenK4Congress.com, look under issues, look under Agenda 21, and you'll see. I think we've got it mentioned there. But
the problem with Ickley, Karen, is they're not really looking for any kind of solutions. Their only solution is we're destroying the planet, and the only way to save it is for us to go back into the Stone Age.
Well, that's part of it, and they also want to destroy any concept of private property.
Private property, yeah.
The big thing with Ickley and with Agenda 21 and with socialism is that everything is community-owned, everything is socialized, everything is shared, we're all in it together, it's all for the children, yada, yada, yada. And the fact of the matter is, we know throughout history, through the study of politics, through the study of economics, private property creates prosperity for everyone. Yeah. It lifts all boats. This idea that, and this is, in fact, there's a great quote, and it says, the solution to the tragedy of the commons is the wonder of private property rights. That's the solution to the tragedy of the commons. And I'm the whole tragedy of the commons is what? You know the story, right? This old turn of the century, when everyone grazes their sheep on the common king's land, everybody overgrazes it, puts as many sheep as they possibly can, and pretty soon there's no grass at all for anyone, right? Mm-hmm. But the solution, certain amounts of
private property.
And it's private property. The solution has always been private property.
It has to be.
It has to be. And the other thing is, we take care of what we own. And this is another example of how people care about what's theirs versus what other people's. They've done studies and you don't have to do studies. You can just go out to a restaurant with a group of people, but you're more likely to spend more, whether it's on food or shopping or anything else, or properties or whatever, cars, if someone else is paying the bill. Seriously, I'll have a small drink. Oh, you're buying. Okay, I'll have a large drink. I mean, this is how people are. It's just amazing.
Well, yeah, and Italy, in the UN, they pass out lots of money. Sure. And it trickles its way down now. Private property, and not only that, but local being able to see. Here's the problem now, as far as private property goes, because the big mining interests in the timber industry they're especially here in New York State. They're getting ready to pass legislation that doesn't allow us to block them. Now, I don't know how it is down there in Virginia, but here in New York. And this is because of the frackers coming in, and they're getting ready to try to pass legislation that will allow them, the Attorney General, actually using taxpayer money to represent the mining interests against the local communities here in New York State. And I'm hoping that we get to strike that one down.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you, there's a lot of discussion here because we are at the southern end of the same. The Marcellus Shale. It reaches all the way down into the upper part of our district here.
I incidentally live in Marcellus, New York.
Do you really? Oh, wow. So we have some of that. The southern end of the Marcellus Shale is here. So there has been some leases have been granted. There's been some interest in fracking here. Of course, they frack in West Virginia on that shale.
Yeah, and Pennsylvania. And
of course, there's a lot of different sides. There's the the danger side, which the left is concerned about, the environmental panic that they have. And then the far right and the right often says, well, it's energy. We should have free market in energy. Well, guess what? I'm going to tell you what the solution is to shale oil. It's all good, but let's have a free market. And let me tell you, and you know this from where you are, you just described it. Those companies that are coming in are indemnified. Number one, by the government from lawsuit. They are exempted from the Clean Water Act. Now, I'm no fan of the EPA, but if you're going to exempt them, you better exempt everybody or not. You have to follow. And they're exempted from that. They're indemnified from lawsuit. And they are subsidized.
They're subsidized.
Subsidized and exempted from regulation. Oh, my goodness.
It's a vicious circle because you have the people, we have... what happens if you can't see corn isn't really sustainable. It's not sustainable. And what happens is people end up leasing out their land to these mining companies.
That's right. No,
it's financial. They put us under the crutch. They're making it each year with ICLEI, with the Agenda 21. They make it a little more difficult to live where I live, where you live, out in the country, where it'll be easier to get in, closer to the city, closer to the more densely populated areas. And I'm not going for it.
No, not at all. And I'll tell you, we can talk more about in the same category about what's happening with not just GMO, but I would call it like the Monsanto GMO complex, because it's not just GMO.
No, it's not just Monsanto.
It's Roundup ready. It's GMO for weed control. The environmentalists love Roundup. The environmentalists love Roundup.
Yeah.
You know why they love Roundup? Because you can do no-till. And no-till saves gas, saves farmers money too.
Yeah,
but then you've got to have GMO corn. Then you're tied into a single source or a corporate conglomeration source for your seed. And every little thing like that moves us into less independence.
Just so everybody knows, Roundup got its start as Agent Orange.
Oh, gosh. Wow. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. I mean, that's where they made their name and where they got their...
Yep. I tell you, there's some pretty interesting stuff going on, and so you have to be aware of Agenda 21. You need to look at some of these larger issues, and also, and this is something I've never been afraid to talk about, and I think in some cases the left wing does this a little bit, but I don't think they understand the economics of it. But corporate capitalism, corporate cronyism. Capitalism. This is not the free market, people. Okay?
No, you know what? I'll throw a word out to you, Karen, that I heard you mention, white-collar welfare.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that just segues right into what you were saying.
Yep, absolutely. And we've got a big problem with that. In fact, the people voting for Bob Goodlatte, I'll tell you just a little quick thing. Talked to a lady, this is some months ago, and I was just getting started in the campaign. And, of course, going to Republican meetings, they weren't very friendly to me. Talked to the one lady. I said, would you, talk, she said, well, I'm voting for Bob. I said, well, can you tell me why? And she said, well, I do military contracts. My company, I'm a businesswoman, and I have a company, and I get military contracts. And Bob makes sure that I get my contracts.
Of course he does.
Didn't talk about defense, didn't talk about defending the country, didn't talk about defending the Constitution, didn't talk about welfare, but that's white-collar welfare is what that is. And those people will vote for Bob. A lot of the country club Republicans who think government is there to make their life more profitable through cronyism, more profit through cronyism, guys, well, they'll vote for Bob, but there's not enough of those guys. Most of us are really getting a lot smarter about what is wrong with this country, and a big part of what is wrong with it is corporate capitalism.
Yeah, horrible mismanagement.
That's right. And a lot of people who hate the free market, a lot of people on the left, they go, oh, it's the free market. No, it's not the free market. You people don't even have a clue what the free market is because you see corporate capitalism and crony capitalism in Washington, and you think that's the free market. It's not the free market.
Oh, it's
what has evolved. Yeah. And
that's what happens when you deregulate Wall Street. When you deregulate the banking industry, they become so powerful.
Well, and the other part of it is when the federal government takes 35, 37, 40% of the GDP and redistributes it, you're going to create corporate capitalism. You're going to create cronyism because there's a lot of people rent-seeking. They're going to look at that money. Hey, I want some of that. Which politician do I have to buy? And how much will it cost me to get some of that redistributed income?
Indeed, Karen. Let me just stop you. I'm sorry. Right there. We got a break coming in. Stay tuned, guys. There's more right after this.
Yeah.
We're coming in now. Well, cat's out of the bag anyways. Welcome back to Against the Wall yet again here at the Orion Talk Radio Network. And we were talking during the break. You obviously heard the end of what we were talking about, drones, and how it always starts out whenever they start, when they first started talking about drones overseas, they were only supposed to be for surveillance. Mm-hmm. Now we see they drop bombs regularly. There's a presidential kill list. We have a lot of disturbing trends going on. They all come down to police state sort of. I'm not going to use the word New World Order or anything like that on you, but what I will say is it's obvious that the economic situation here in America, around the world, is getting worse. I'm not going to say there's a collapse imminent, although a lot of people predict this. Our government seems to have used all the legislation that they could in the last few years to be able to legally do some of the things that we were told that, people like Adolf Hitler and Stalin were evil for doing. And now we're able to do it legally. Our president is able to assassinate American citizens regardless of due process or whether or not this person has been proven to have done anything. And this is a disturbing trend. And here, again, we mentioned in the NDAA about military troops. Well, I just read, and this might interest you, an article the other day out of the Air Force Tribune, or one of the Air Force periodicals, that in this NDAA will be a provision allowing for reservists, active duty reservists, to be used here in America for, they say, natural disasters, and then after that, it's almost like, in quotes, or emergencies.
That's right. Well, we saw a little bit of this after Katrina, right, when you had National Guard going in there confiscating weapons illegally from people and shooting people.
Well, we also saw private contractors, Blackwater, right, down there.
That's right. And so what people have to do, we don't have to talk about New World Order, although George Herbert Walker Bush liked to talk about it. We don't have to talk about it.
They've all mentioned it.
That's right. Yeah. Do you know, though, what's happening is, as Americans, our economy is more and more constrained because of all this debt. We have over 100% debt to GDP ratio, and it's not getting any better. And there's no backbone to reduce that debt.
I read something, Karen, that said the world's debt, the debt in the world to the world's GDP is something like 395 times the GDP of the entire world.
Well,
the debt out there.
Well, I guess that's not going to get paid back, is it?
I can't see how.
So when you so what we have just in the United States is an empire that is contracting, and we're seeing it. 10 years in Iraq. Okay, we're going to bring some of the troops home. 10, 11 years in Afghanistan. Well, it looks like we're going to bring some of the troops home. And as that, but yet the military budget, the Pentagon's budget, has continued to grow. The intelligence budget continued to grow. These organizations, these bureaucracies don't want to see a reduction in their spending. The contracts and the contractors that depend on them, they don't want to see a reduction in their spending. So they need new areas to colonize, new areas
that
to
white-collar welfare you're talking about.
It's exactly right. And they need new places to go and new justified missions. And what is the justified mission that we're seeing as the military, as the Pentagon faces pressure to reduce its spending, refuses to do it? What are they doing? They're bringing the military home. Yeah. They're bringing the military home. They're creating new markets for these same contractors.
Oh, right.
Northrop Grumman sells these drones, okay? And the weapon manufacturers, they're selling these weapons to the government just like they always did, but we don't have a justified global empire for that. So now we're going to use them on Americans. And it supports the government's idea that it has facing increasing pressure from the people. People are increasingly dissatisfied with our government. The government is too big. We want the government to stop spending, and they don't want to stop spending. So what are they going to do? Well, they arm themselves against the people, and that's what the drones. 450 million hollow point rounds bought by the Department of Homeland Security a few months ago.
Outlawed.
What is that about?
You're not even allowed to use them in war. I mean, they're outlawed on the battlefield, but they're going to have them here.
Our soldiers cannot shoot that at Pakistanis or Afghanistanis, okay? Our soldiers cannot use hollow points, but those hollow points are in the inventory now or taking delivery of Department of Homeland Security. Who are they going to shoot with them? Well, they're not going to hunt with them because it ruins the meat, right? But what are we going to do? They're going to use them against Americans. That's the next big war, and I'm really sorry to have to say it like that because it sounds really crazy. But all I can say is look at what they're buying. Look at what they're preparing for. Look at the 377 words that they're monitoring. What's that? What's that about? I think what it's about is the federal government at every level, but the federal government in particular. And it is around the whole country. I mean, they're doing the drug war, they're doing all this stuff. Department of Justice is everywhere. ATF,
New York State is now taking DNA samples from all convicted misdemeanors.
There you go. You've got the federal government extremely worried that its gravy train that it has created out of our own pockets, that gravy train is going to be constrained. It's going to be reduced. Partly because there's not enough money to pay the debt, right? There's not enough money to pay the debt. You pointed out.
What's most disgusting, Karen, is this handful of bankers at the top just getting fat off the servicing of this debt that can never be repaid.
Absolutely right. And what you're talking about there with the servicing of the debt, you're really talking about the very criticisms that 100 years ago were made when we formed, against the better judgment of most Republicans, we formed the Federal Reserve Bank. And see, that's what they talked about. They said, why would we create situation that feeds interest payments for nothing to these private bankers? Why would we do that? And we did it, of course, and now we see what happens. The government borrows money, we get lots of debt can't be paid, government becomes afraid of the people, and then they buy hollow points and they buy drones, armed drones. So to use against what? The people.
I mean, you can say what you want about Alexander Hamilton, but he was absolutely against the central bank. You just can't let a private institution create the money that we use. No.
And actually, even if you could do it, we can't do it in this country because our Constitution says it's not going to be done that way. Our Constitution says that's one of the roles. The coining of the money is a role of the government. To put that power, responsibility in the hands of people that can profit from it. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my gosh. We did it.
Oh, yeah. And then we get fractional reserve lending, which is what is the actual problem now.
It's a huge problem. And certainly inflation. Well, who does inflation hurt? Not the borrowers, not the big government. They love inflation.
Yeah, because they spend it first.
That's right. They spend the money first, and they pay back the people they owe the money to, Social Security, all the people that get paid through government, particularly Social Security, who they gave their money at real value, but they're going to get it paid back to them at 1/10 of the value due to inflation that's been created by the Federal Reserve, by this creation of money that hasn't tracked with the actual marketplace need for money, but it has tracked with the need of government to spend money. And so it's an ugly, ugly thing. We are living through today a situation of crisis that has taken really 100 years to do. and it's been compounded by these wars. But people who study the Federal Reserve would say we wouldn't have had these wars if the Federal Reserve hadn't have been there. The Federal Reserve predated our push in World War I, an unpopular war. In fact, Wilson ran saying, I will never get us in that great war over in Europe. It's not our war. Sure enough, he did. Federal Reserve made that possible. Same
Absolutely.
With all this other spending. So the spending of government is made possible through the creation of money, which is this public-private...
And the ability to borrow it against the will of the people.
Against the will of the people in an unaccountable way. And then to lay that debt on the people's feet. Oh, don't worry. Your grandchildren will pay it back. I'm going to tell you something. One of the reasons I'm running for Congress is because my grandchildren are not going to pay that debt, and I'm going to make sure we never ask them to. That's it. That's how I view it. Yeah, I mean, this is the battle cry. We owe our children and our grandchildren so much more than we have left them. If we died, if people of my generation, I'm 50 years old, okay, and we're a big part of this problem, okay, because we have. We've got the internet so we can become informed on what's wrong. But what have we done to fix what's wrong? It's one thing if you don't know what's wrong. And I would have to tell you that a lot of people in the 1940s, only the intellectuals that were conservative, only the Taft wing and the Goldwater wing of the Republican Party and the Libertarian wing, they knew what was wrong. But that wasn't the mainstream of people. Plus, the government was a lot smaller then. But here, we have no excuse today. We can read this stuff. You want to understand the Federal Reserve? You can find out. You can watch a video in an hour, and you will know a lifetime of education.
Exactly.
The internet makes it possible to instantly understand the context, the history, the impact of these things. We have a responsibility to do something. Because I'm telling you, it is not my kids' fault, my grandkids' fault, and I will not have them pay for our mistakes. We need to fix it now. And you know what? A little bit of pain, it's fine with me.
And some of that, yeah, we're due for pain anyways, guys. People don't seem to understand that. They, a little bit less comfort incrementally doesn't seem to bother them. But look, there's pain in store. Either way, there's pain in store. Let's do it. Let's choose what we're going to replace this debt, this system that's a yoke that's going to cause our children and our children's children to be, slaves to a fascist courtocracy.
That's exactly right. A fascist corpocracy, if you want to call it that. They are certainly viewing our children and grandchildren as debt slaves.
Yeah, you spend your life servicing debt, day one, start to finish.
That's right. That's right. And we're seeing it to some extent. And see, this is actually interesting for the young people, interesting in a strange way. A lot of folks, 35 and 40 and younger, and certainly a lot of kids 20 and 19 and 20 in college now are accumulating lots of student debt. And they're actually realizing the impact of that student debt, not the rest of the federal debt, just student debt is going to make on them.
It's horrible, Karen.
Really
we'll be back after this break. Do you want to stick around for hour number 2, Karen?
Sure enough, I'm here.
Okay, we'll be back right after this. Karen Kwiatkowski, Karen K for Congress.com.
Still fight for Saddam, but that's bullish. I'll show you why it's totally wrong. Cause if another country invaded the hood tonight, it'd be warfare through Harlem and Washington Heights. I wouldn't be fighting for Bush or white America's dream. I'd be fighting for my people's survival and self-esteem. I wouldn't fight for racist.
Okay, back from the break here at Against the Wall on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Again, talking to Karen Kwiatkowski. Is that how you pronounce it? Kwiatkowski?
Kwiatkowski,
okay.
Kwiatkowski. Yeah.
I don't want to keep butchering
I guess I should tell people is we do have a Facebook page, and a lot of our most current stuff and conversations are going on our Facebook page. It's just Karen K for Congress. It's Facebook. So if you just search for it, you'll find it.
You just go and like it.
You just go
She'll
like it.
it.
Yeah, and actually, we'd love you to go like it. That's great, because those Facebook likes are always something that people try to get. We have quite a few. We want a lot more of them because it helps us get the word out and be a part of the larger community. So we like Facebook. Although I do recommend, we have our pictures up there, but I prefer symbols and cartoons because apparently Facebook is being used, it's a whole, image database.
Isn't it crazy?
And it is. It's crazy.
You upload a picture and it tells you who's in it.
I know, kind of scary, but that's life. We'll deal with it. But we were talking during the break about the language of liberty, and
right.
If we can define what liberty is and what freedom is, if we understand in our hearts what it is, if we think about it and what it means to us personally, then we're going to be better citizens who can demand that liberty from our government.
To be sure, if it took 4 or 5 generations to get where we're at, it could take that many to get out.
It could. And the other thing about liberty, we don't really ask for liberty from our government. We can demand that government get its filthy hands off of our liberty.
Right.
And that's really what the 10 Amendments are about. The first 10, the Bill of Rights, is about, it's all telling the government, Congress shall make no law. Congress shall not interfere. These are the things. This liberty is what we own. The founders said, the creators, it's innate in our humanity that we'll have this liberty, that we will have the ability to own property, to use that property as we see fit, to make decisions for ourselves. And so what the Bill of Rights says is, government, get your hands off of it, because
right.
we know you want it, but you can't have it.
What I always like to say, Karen, is it's not a list of things that we can or can't do. That the Bill of Rights is a list of things that the government cannot and shall not do.
There you go. That's exactly.
And it's my opinion. I don't want to hem you into anything here that may hurt you later on. But my personal opinion is this: is if we can't get our federal government to abide by the Bill of Rights, the list of things that it cannot do, then there was a document that was prepared on hemp paper long before the Constitution called the Declaration of Independence.
That's right. And boy, oh boy, I tell you, it is eye-opening for people to relook at, and young people, old people, anybody. Relook at that Declaration of Independence. Look at the list of grievances. Oh, my goodness. We could have written that under the Bush administration. We could have written it under the Obama administration. It's the same grievances. He throws us into jail and doesn't allow us to have our day in court. He seizes our property. He tramples on, he knocks our door down.
The only thing that hasn't come to fruition yet is being able to quarter the King's troops. And, that's not far behind. We see that legislation coming in right now.
I'll tell you my theory on the Third Amendment. You want to hear my theory on the Third Amendment?
Yes, I do.
Quartering of soldiers. We do quarter soldiers. Oh, absolutely, we quarter soldiers. That 37% that the federal government takes out of my pocket,
you're right.
Good much of that is untouchable because they're paying for the quartering of soldiers.
True.
On my dollar. And
$20 billion to air condition the desert.
There you go. Oh, we're quartering soldiers. You can be sure of that. And trust me, if you think about the police state and the Department of Homeland Security, they'll kick any door down they want to, and they'll take any property they want to. And I'll tell you, one of the interesting things about the in terms of property, this isn't really militarization of the security state or anything like that. But one thing about property, and many states have done this. In Virginia, of course, I'm in Virginia. Virginia has done this too. We are strengthening. We're strengthening our private property protections, and we're strengthening our eminent domain protections of the private property owners from eminent domain by the state. We're doing that very conscientiously, and in fact, I think this November there is the way we do changes to our Constitution in Virginia is two of the assemblies have to agree on the language, and then they throw it out to the people to vote. And we're going to vote this November on a strengthened protection of the private property owners from eminent domain at every level.
Because eminent domain, to be sure, is an absolute, utter violation of due process.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And so people are upset about government abuses of their property. So we're strengthening it, and many other states are following suit. And this all traces back to the case up in Connecticut, the Kelo decision. And the funny thing about Kelo, I'm sure your listeners are all familiar with Kelo, but in Kelo, the Supreme Court ruled that the state did have the right to take property, but they were doing so as a states' rights type of framework. They said, well, it's not for us to tell the state how to do it, which is really interesting because I wish they'd rule everything on a states' rights, 10th Amendment, but they don't.
Well, you're more apt to be represented on a state level than you are on a federal level.
They looked at it that way. But what happened was people saw this decision and they woke up. They woke up to the abuses that are happening. And so and they realized you can't count on the federal government for anything, which is a good thing to realize because you can't. The only thing you can count on them to do is take more of your property and abuse your rights. That's what the federal government will do.
You look at I think it was in Hawaii. There was a small community with a park in it, a tourist park in it, and they'd been waiting for almost a year for the government to come in and fix the road. It was going to be a $4 million project. And they got tired of waiting, so the property owners got together, and in about 3 days, with about $8,000 of money that they got together, they fixed it. They fixed the road and opened the park because it was. I mean, that's big government. That's why we have to get rid of this big, huge government, and a small government depends upon people who put forth a little bit of effort in their communities. I mean, you can't just live inside your home and say, I got a guy for that. Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right. And, the small government is also bad. I mean, because government by nature is the very worst of the people, I can tell you, who want power over others. But if you can keep it small and keep it underfunded and keep it limited, which is what the founders tried to do with the Constitution, although it didn't really work out so well in that regard, but they tried to keep it limited, then at least you can manage that particular evil. And many people would say government is a necessary evil. And so, we want to keep that management.
Underfunded, I think, is the key word there.
Yeah, underfunded is the way to do it. And, of course, you can't hardly count on any of those Congress people to cut anything. I mean, even the Ryan plan, what is he really seriously cutting? What is he really cutting? For the most part, they talk about the out years. Oh, we'll spend less than we thought we were. And that's right. They need to seriously cut what they are doing. And I want to see government people retired, if that's what needs to happen. I don't want to see more government employees hired. When we have contractors doing the work of government, I'd like to see those contracts reduced or eliminated. I want to see less spending at the federal level, period. And yes, it will hurt for a short amount of time. It will hurt. But I don't know how old you are. Yeah, I do.
I'm 43.
I do. Okay, you're a little younger than me. But you will remember in the 80s when IBM went under and there was a glut. There was a glut of white-collar computer-type workers. This is before the software crash of the 90s. Remember when AOL was so high and then it crashed? Yeah, this is before that. I'm talking about, and we had white-collar workers, a lot of times technical people, college-educated people out of work. And everybody was worried. Oh, my goodness, we've never had white-collar, college-educated people out of work, unemployed at these levels. Oh, it's terrible, it's terrible. And do you know, and we all know because we've read the stories, almost every one of these people said, best thing that ever happened to me is when I lost my job at IBM. Because I took my true love, my true skills, my true sets of knowledge and ability to serve others, and I went and did A, B, C, or D. And those things not only supported me financially or made me $1 million financially, but also made me a better person, made me a better member of my community, turned me into this or that, which was better for everyone. So, we were worried. We said, white collar workers out of work. Oh my goodness, that's terrible.
Are you kidding? Right now, there's almost 34,000 PhDs on food stamps or welfare.
Yeah. Well, and part of that, of course, the government has shrunken opportunities by taking all the capital out of the private system. That's understandable. But what I'm saying is it's okay to put people out of work. Okay? It's okay, especially if those people are working make-work jobs.
Okay, we got a break coming in here.
We can talk more about this afterwards.
Absolutely. We'll talk about it right after the break. We'll be right back with Karen Kwiatkowski without the W right here on the Orion Talk Radio Network.
attention that a mysterious force is loose somewhere in outer
terms of
space.
the, but I'm not an expert on that, so maybe we could talk about
Okay,
something.
we'll skip it.
I'm not smart on all that stuff.
We'll skip it because we are back from the break. The music is on, but you can hear me. By the way, it's 4:20, and I think everybody knows what that means. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about, I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, drones. We briefly mentioned CISPA and ACTA and habeas corpus. The Federal Reserve and the debt we've talked about. No, I heard something. I heard an interview that you did, and I heard the words mentioned, pre-revolutionary America.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right now, and we're not talking about 1774. We're talking about 2012 as pre-revolutionary America, because the fact is that people around this entire country, and I'll even broaden that to say that people around the world are starting to realize that the current system doesn't include them.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, we are. I'll tell you where I got those words from, of course. I was out in Philadelphia when Ron Paul was there a month and a half or so ago. He had a rally in Philadelphia, and I got to go to that rally, and I also got to attend the dinner in the audience there. And Ron Paul gave a talk. And in that talk, he said that he believed this country was in a pre-revolutionary state, a pre-revolutionary era. And if you think about what that means, and you can think back to our other revolution back in the day, it took a long time to get to where we were. And if you think about the events leading up to 1776, the Declaration of Independence, if you think about those events, we had a war, the French Indian Wars, conducted by the King of England on a good part of our Western territories, okay, in this country. And we were us Americans at that time, we were subjects of the king. We were in that war. We were told to fight. They came to our farms and they said, you will fight for the king. And many did it. Some tried not to do it. But all of them were thinking about what that meant. Was that just and correct? And then what happened after that 7 years of global war? It was really a world war. The French Indian Wars on the North America were really those wars were global. It was kind of a world war that England was engaged in.
The known world, anyways. The civilized world, right?
Whatever they called it, that's right. And I'm not sure how civilized it was. I'm not sure how civilized we are today. But let me tell you, we had a war, right? We were made to fight that war, and the king accumulated debts in that war. And then after that war was over with, the king had to pay the people he owed money to, pay his debtors. Okay, or his loan, whoever loaned him the money. Okay, these noblemen and other countries, they wanted their money, and so the king began to do what? Began to raise taxes. Yep. Okay, not in the sense that we think of them, because we have huge more taxes than they did back then. But he raised taxes. He took resources. He tried to control tariffs. He did this to pay his war debt. Now, we didn't like the war to begin with, and it was fought in a good part by colonists, okay? They didn't like it. It wasn't their war. They didn't think it was necessary, but they fought. And
all it did was retain the king's power over that area. It didn't give them any benefit at all whatsoever.
It absolutely did not, so they saw through it, and then they were made to pay for it after the fact, and then you get the Tea Party, then you get people pushing back. But they're not just pushing back because of taxes. They're pushing back because they realize that the interests of the king were not the interests of the people.
That's
okay?
Right.
So that's pre-revolutionary. Now, what are we in right now? And now Ron Paul didn't explain all this. He just talked about it. He laid it out there. Okay? He says we're in a pre-revolutionary era. Well, we are, because we realize that the interests of our government in Washington are not our interests of the people. They're not our interests, okay? They don't serve us. We are debt serfs. We are serfs. We are slaves.
And you know what, Karen? The most beautiful thing about it is today is we're at the point right now where 200 years ago, people were meeting secretly in pubs and inns. We're not doing that anymore. We've got the internet. We're doing it out in the open, in the light. We know that we're right. We know that.
That's right.
And they know too, Karen. They know their days are numbered.
That's
These
right.
Multinational corporations that have their thumb on every human, every third world nation, every place in the world where you see Monsanto or Shell or even Dole. you'll see that
That's
you'll
right.
see a yoke on the folks that live there, on
That's
their
right.
resources.
That's exactly right. And when in the late 1700s they would print things up at the printers and they'd tack them onto trees and they'd put them onto buildings, the side of buildings, posters and pamphlets. Our pamphlets are what we're doing right now. Our emails, our articles posted on blogs and websites. This is our way of setting the stage for communicating that we have a different view. We, the people, have a different set of values than does our government. Now,
That's right.
But wasn't always that way. When Thomas Jefferson
Karen,
was,
and you know what? I just want I want people to remember that we love each other, that we care about each other, that and we've forgotten that. We're so divided by gay, by black and white, by red and blue, by
That's exactly
by
right.
up and down, pro and anti this, that we forget that we're a nation of people who love their neighbors and their families.
That's right. We love our families. We love our neighbors. We want to help them out. We want to live peacefully. And we want to trade with them. And the most peaceful thing in the world you can do.
And we want to
is
be
free trade.
charitable.
Sure. We want to be
want
charitable.
that
How can you be charitable? You have to have private property in
That's
order
right.
to give it away. Because
And
it has to
sound
be
money.
yours. It has to be yours in order to give it. So all of these things that we value, left and right and center, that unites us. And then we have the government, our government, which is made up of basically bureaucrats. I mean, seriously, who can tell the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans? Who can tell the difference? They don't believe, either one of them don't believe their creed.
The
Democrats
differences are essentially just rhetorical now. They're not. They
That's
don't
right.
have any
Well,
real.
What have the
controversy.
Democrats done for poor people except make more of them? What have they
Yeah,
done?
make them become dependent. They make even more. They make it easier.
Sure.
Look, I'm a firm believer that without if a woman and a man were responsible for their children, they would quit a lot sooner. You know what I'm saying? Your economy would be more apt to decide how many children you had. But when the state's just going to come in and pay for them, as long as the daddy's not at home,
That's right.
where's
I
the
mean,
incentive to be responsible?
There's no incentive, and the Democratic Party and the things that they vote for hurt prosperity. They hurt private economy. They hurt private property. They make more poor people. And then here's the Republicans. What do they say? Oh, we like corporations to compete, and then they have crony capitalism, and they go, oh, we like defense, and they create an empire, which
And
makes
none
us
of them want to go after the
older.
Federal Reserve. That's essentially it
That's
right there.
The party. That's
That's
the party.
tick in the haystack.
You got that right. That's the party. And so what we're seeing is all of us from all different perspectives and backgrounds, but we don't live in Washington and we're not part of the government, and we look at what it does and we label it correctly. It's the government against the people. It is the state against the people.
And it's going to
so-
be even worse when it's more than just us trying to get answers from the federal government, when now we're having bureaucrats somewhere in Germany or Austria
Well,
or somewhere else in the UN
Yeah.
decide what policy is going to be on our farmlands here in America, our
It's-
waterways here in America.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge problem. And I think one thing that's hopeful, and I do feel sorry for many of the Europeans, but I could have told them this about 20 years ago when they all signed into the EU and they decided to have a common currency. But what we're seeing with the collapse of the pig economies, Portugal and
Right.
Spain and Italy and Ireland and what's the other one? Greece, of course. Greece is always in the news. But when we see this collapse of their economies, when we see the trend line that they have done for themselves, and we look at its relationship to the EU and to the bureaucracy of the EU and the euro and these mandates and these heavy overlay of government positions that have to be funded off the actual working people, which increasingly we're finding only in Germany. For
Right.
guys, I mean, this is scary. So. When we see this, there's a lesson there, both for Europeans who have to live through it, and I do feel sorry for them, but also a lesson for all of us. And you mentioned during the break, you mentioned what I thought about state banks. Now, only one state that I'm aware of, I think it's North Dakota, has a state bank.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, if you look at the European Union's financial problems, we may be wanting to see more states with state banks with a little
I
bit of more
agree.
currency control, a little bit of more currency independence in order to prevent what's happening in Europe.
competing currencies. Competing currencies would help take a dent out of the corporate welfare, the white-collar welfare. If we before the break, we're talking about the State Bank of North Dakota and other, that's a way. If you have competing currencies, that's a way to protect yourself. A way to protect yourself from the tyranny that's coming down the pike. You would think that the states would all really be talking about these things, but nobody really wants, because they're all part of the Federal Reserve cash cow.
Yeah.
Because it all dribbles downhill, and they just see the reason that we're not seeing, the reason they've been able to hold back the crisis the way, unlike the way they've been able to do it in Europe, is we still have the ability to print and monetize debt and bad bets, but that is not far off where the debt is. We won't even be able to service the debt any longer, and some people predict 2012, and I'm not talking about Mayans either.
Oh yeah.
So you know what? One thing I wanted to mention. All right, we'll talk about state banks or a state bank or even local competing currencies. It can't be, script. There has to be a way to get ourselves out of this system.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that can be done just in a practical way, and this is something I'm going to work on, we get elected here on June 12th and then on in November, is auditing the Federal Reserve and ultimately eliminating the Federal Reserve, okay? At least a good part of what it assumes its powers are, because if we had market set interest rates, just think about that. Our interest rates right now, controlled by the Fed, they raise
zero.
It's zero, basically, and that favors government borrowing. Okay?
Yeah.
Borrowers and government borrowing. Okay. Now, if you had a market rate, global, national, state, whatever, market set interest rates, the interest rate would be much higher. And for
People
America,
be able to save.
For this government, sure, we'd be able to save money and create capital, and banks would be able to allocate that capital in a market-based decision-making, meaning we would have more business, more jobs, all that. But think about what it would do to the ability of our government to borrow if interest rates were set for our government. And also, too, think about your credit rating, right? Let's say you have a really good credit rating. You're going to get a lower interest rate, right? But let's say your track record is really bad.
Is horrible.
And it's horrible. You're going to pay a higher interest rate, okay? Our government's track record is extremely bad. The numbers don't lie in terms of our government's ability to pay back this debt. They know that they can't do it. A lender will know that it's going to be a high-risk thing to lend money to the United States government. So if interest rates were free-floating and market-based, our government could not borrow, which means it would be forced to cut spending. It would be forced to reduce the size of its bureaucracy. It would be forced to stop doing things that it's currently doing that are unconstitutional. It would be forced to do that. Now,
people say, well, how would we have roads and highways? Local governments would hire what? Yeah. Local corporations. There'd be competition. There'd be jobs. You'd get the job done.
And trust me, the government's under a constraint of money and a constraint of borrowing. Governments are just like households in this regard. Okay, when mom and dad tell the kids daddy's lost his job, and so we're going to have less money, and the little kid says, "What about pizza on Friday?" Well, we say, "Well, we can't have pizza on Friday. We have to eat something else." But then the kid says, "Well, are we going to pay for heat?" And mom and dad go, yes, son, we're going to pay for heat. Families know how to prioritize what they need.
Right.
Maybe they can put off the pizza, but they got to have the heat if it's in the middle of winter. They'll pay for what they have to have. Governments will do the same thing. Now, what we have with the Federal Reserve artificially holding these interest rates down to zero, basically, effectively zero, giving money away, making it available with no corresponding asset, which causes inflation. Okay, what we have today allows government to continue on this bad path of spending. Now, because they spend, they borrow, it's cheap to borrow, who cares, why not, let the grandkids pay for it, whatever, right? Wrong attitude. Get rid of the Federal Reserve's ability, keep the Federal Reserve, don't allow it to set interest rates. That alone would fix the problem. There are lots of ways to get there. And it doesn't have to take a crisis of hyperinflation and a total reset.
Re-regulate the banking industry.
That's right. That's right. Well, I don't know, like how I wouldn't trust anybody in government to actually regulate banking. I'd like to see the market regulate banking. I would like to see people that are too big to fail.
Break them up.
There is nobody too big to fail.
Yeah,
nobody.
They need to be broken up into a bunch of little companies or little banks.
Right. And you know what? The free market will do that in the quickest, most painless, and wisest way, because people who know about those particular industries, think about when in your own hometown, and you're up in New York, you've seen businesses go out of business. But think about, sure, well, we have too here. And you know, when you have auctions of odd equipment, a lot of times you go to auctions, people go to auctions to socialize, right? They go to auctions, see all their friends. A lot of times there's stuff for sale. This is what I find interesting about auctions. You will see all kinds of equipment and all kinds of stuff that you have no idea what that is. But do you know somebody at that auction knows exactly what that is and knows exactly where that can be best used, and they bid it up to market rates, and they take that a piece of equipment away and they take it somewhere and they sell it or use it in a way that's best suited for productivity. That's what they do. That's the free market. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to have free market in this country. We got the Federal Reserve allowing the government to create money out of thin air and spend like a drunken sailor and then say our grandkids are going to pay for it. That's not happening. My grandkids are not paying for it. I want to make sure of that. But anyway, I think there's ways that aren't really that radical and don't require a total change. How about free floating interest rates? Let's try that. Have we tried it? Not since 1912. We haven't tried it since 1912. Why don't we try that? I'll vote for it.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said we need to keep the government underfunded.
Absolutely.
You know, they've got to ask us. It shouldn't come to the point where I mean, Karen, you see it. It's crazy. You need permission for everything nowadays. And the government, when I say government, I mean this giant, and now it's a global bureaucracy, but this giant bureaucracy of departments of this and departments of that, right down to your town, to the code enforcement officer, it's just absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. And this giant bureaucracy is self-sustaining. You could replace the humans in any level.
Yeah, the bureaucracy is it's a self-licking ice cream cone, as we used to say in the Pentagon, and it's a real problem. But if you cut their budget and seriously cut their spending, they will make their decisions, and they won't stop building roads before they stop doing all the other stupid things they're doing, and the things that are most important, and the things that people actually want and need will be done. Now, think about this: Obamacare. Let's just think about Obamacare or Romney Care, for that matter. Either one.
Either one.
We got 3 minutes. Yeah, we didn't have Obamacare before we had Obamacare, right? Well, were the people craving Obamacare? No, they weren't craving Obamacare. So could we get rid of it? Probably so. Do we need to have all these other people on Medicaid? They're going to double the number of people on Medicaid in all the states, and states have to pay for that. Do we need to have all those people on Medicaid? No, we don't. Can we go back to where less of them are on Medicaid? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. There's Obama's things. Well, here's what I say. Shrink government? Yes, we can.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of growing a giant socialist, bureaucracy where everybody's just mediocre. We're not a land of mediocre people.
No, we're not. We have such potential, and we're being burdened, actually, by a government we can't afford and don't want.
Service and debt. It all comes down to service and debt.
That's right. Yep, and it's a bad way to be. We don't have to be that way. There are things that we can do concretely, practical things that we can do.
One of the things we should do immediately is end the wars we're in. All that, the trillions of dollars we've spent over the last 10, 12 years.
Well, we need to end those wars, and then we need to end the wars we're fighting against the American people through the Department of Homeland Security. We need to end the Department of Homeland Security and repeal the Patriot Act in its entirety.
Immediately.
I'm totally for a reset back to 2001. And then if you don't like how the agencies are talking to each other, let's do something about that. But let me tell you, when they passed the Patriot Act, they said, Department of Homeland Security will make sure all these other agencies talk to each other. By golly, they don't talk to each other today. They do not talk to each other. They duplicate effort at every level. And this is wrong. So I'm all about fixing problems, but we need to repeal the Patriot Act 100%, eliminate the DHS, spin those agencies out, reduce their funding, fire a bunch of czars. Hey, you know what? I actually don't have
with that, Karen? Czars.
These czars. I have a problem with paying their salaries. I say cut their salaries. You want to be a volunteer?
That's right. We'll be right back after this last break. This is the last break, and then the final segment here at Against the Wall. We've got a great lineup today. Stay tuned, because there's more. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of voting, of trying to choose between the lesser of two evils. I'm tired of millionaire congressmen, scumbag, insider traders. I'm tired of Congress critters and politicians who use their position to punish their enemies and reward their friends. Now, there is an answer. There is a solution. You have to become active. You have to be you have to put forth some effort, and you have to vote for people like Karen Kwiatkowski. You have to seek out people who want to help the local, who actually want to help, who talk about things that may cause pain, but, that aren't the status quo. The status quo, it's become obvious, is not conducive to to the public domain, and to us. It isn't there for us, Karen.
No, not at all. Not at all. The status quo is supportive of the politicians and their crony capitalist sponsors. They're not responsive to our votes. In fact, one of the things we're seeing in our campaign, if we want to talk about what we're doing here in 6th District, is Bob Goodlatte basically denies his record and denies that he has a challenger, refuses to debate, refuses to address any issues whatsoever. To address these issues empowers the people to make a decision. And that's the last thing. That's the last thing that status quo politicians want, is they don't want you informed, and they don't want you talking about what it is that they're doing. They don't want you thinking about what it is that they're doing. And so their strategies very much are similar. Now, think about Richard Lugar. Lugar got beat just now by Richard Mourdock over in Indiana in the Senate primary that they had there, Republican Senate primary. And Lugar ran the same kind of campaign, pretty much, that Bob Goodlatte's running. He basically said, don't look over here. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Don't worry. I'm good for you, and I'm going to keep doing all these good things. I'm not going to talk about specifics. And I don't know who this guy is that's challenging me. That's just crazy talk, right? And guess what? He got beat bad. And but we hope Bob will get beat bad too. Certainly, we've scared Bob Goodlatte. There's no doubt about that. But status quo politicians, they like where they have it. They got it good on our backs, and those days are ending.
That's right. Their days are numbered. The days of getting into Congress and then living the life of luxury just by virtue of the fact that you've been elected to an office, those days are numbered. Those are the days. That's why we are where we are. Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. If those people had to work for their money, holy crap.
Oh yeah.
I think we would all be a little more responsible.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's a big problem, and it's a status quo problem. And it's helped by the public school system, which tries to make people not think critically. It ill informs people. But thank goodness, we don't have to complain about what's wrong. We can talk about what's right because we have the internet, so we can talk to others. We can learn from people who know. We can read history, which we could never get a hold of in high school or college. But you can start understanding what's happening, why it's happening, and we can take charge of our own country. So we do have the internet, and I think this is one of the reasons Congress is so interested in monitoring and managing the internet.
Yeah, let's end right there. Or not end right there, but let's talk about that now. SOPA, CISPA, ACTA.
Oh, yeah, sure. SOPA,
these
CISPA,
are all things geared towards being able to handle the internet. I mean, they use copyright and they use all these other terms, but really, essentially, Karen, it's so that they're going to be so that they can they want to be able to control content. Not only that, but you remember just last week when they're talking about being able to essentially use propaganda, that the CIA might run in a foreign nation here in America, which some people are like, well, so what?
Yeah, and they're already doing it anyway.
Yeah.
It's not legal to do. But, they want to know what we are doing with the internet. That's one thing they want to do. They want to know what we're doing. They want to invade, they want to violate the Fourth Amendment. They want to know what we're doing, our persons, our property, and our papers. They want to know. They don't need a warrant. They don't want a warrant. They just want to know what we're doing. Then they want to restrict our access to the communications. They want to restrict, in the old days, it would be restricting our access to paper and restricting our access to a hammer and a nail so we can nail that paper up on a wall, okay? Today with the internet, they want to restrict our access to the complete internet. They want to control who it is we talk to and who we cannot talk to. That's what they want to do. And then they want to know in real time what it is we're talking about. Not just what we're doing, but what are we working on? Who are we working with? They want to interfere with our First Amendment right of free association. Okay, not just free speech, but association, because virtual association on the internet is extremely powerful. And we know this because this is why Facebook just went with an IPO and is worth $1 billion, because associations of human beings are powerful, wonderful, productive things. Okay.
Essentially, they want to eliminate our ability to articulate, real issues.
With real people. With real
people, yeah.
Yes. And again, it is about the needs of a fascist or a socialist or a national socialist state and the need of that state. That state exists on isolated serfs, on atomized human beings who do not have a community, who cannot trust their neighbors, who cannot trust their family members, and who are dependent on government for everything that they get. Now, if you have people like that, you can have a fascist state. But if you don't have people like that, if you have people that are independent and interdependent and can communicate with other people and have real communities and virtual communities, and we talk about these
people
things,
who aren't afraid to help each other.
That's right. Now you have people that are Republicans. They're small R Republicans. They are people suited to be citizens in a republic. Okay, and the government can't stand that. Our government today cannot stand that. The founders required it. Our government today hates it. And so there you go. That's how I feel. I hope I didn't come on too strong.
No, this is awesome. This is great. You go. So, and listen, I really want to thank you, Karen. This has been one of my favorite interviews in a while.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad we could get together and do this. And certainly, I'll tell you, after the election on June 12th, obviously we're trying to think about that. But once that's over with, win or lose, I'll be happy to come back. If we'll talk about what we learned. Win or lose. If we've won, we're going to talk about how we go forward on some of these ideas, because we're going to. And if we lose, we're still going forward with these same ideas, because these are the ideas that are going to save our republic, regardless of who's elected. These are the ideas that we have to have. We have to embrace them. We have to talk about them. We have to know about them. We've got to share them. So, and that's what you're doing. And I so appreciate what it is that you are doing. And I'm glad you had me on today. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Karen. Well, the election is coming right up, and good luck to you on the election. And win or lose, if you find the time, I would love, since being that I'm the master of ceremony this year at the Freedom Palooza, it would just tickle me pink to be able to introduce you to the crowd.
Absolutely.
We'll see what happens.
I'll try to be there if I can at all. If I can all be there, I will try to drive up there because it's not that far from where I live.
Yeah, so, I look forward to it.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm had fun today. We'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah, we got about 3 more minutes. So,
okay, good.
As we end, first of all, let's read out. Let's go over. You can find Karen Kwiatkowski on Kwiatkowski, pardon me, on Facebook. Karen K for Congress.com. How else can they find you on Twitter?
Yeah, we have Twitter. It's Karen for the 6th is what it is. So it's KAREN, the number 4 THE 6th. So it sounds complicated, but anyway, Karen for the 6th, because I'm in the 6th district, so I'm Karen for the 6th. That's my Twitter thing. Facebook, of course, Karen K for Congress. You can find us, just search. And of course, my archives at Lou Rockwell are available. I haven't written nearly as much for Lou as I would have in the past 6 months, and it's because of this campaign. Once the campaign's over, win or lose, I'm going to go back to writing more frequently for Lou Rockwell. I think that's a huge platform of really the intellectual basis and foundation of liberty is found there. I think I love it. So
well, I've read many Ron Paul books, and I noticed that you contributed. You were the co-author of one, and the first time that I had ever seen you was in the documentary Why We Fight. And
good documentary. Not really political, but it tells the facts, and it's that particular Why We Fight is woven around Dwight D. Eisenhower's warning, which I think most people, left, right, or indifferent, agree with and understand, and it's part of our modern history. So
it's obvious to an idiot now.
There you go. You got that right. Boy, he was a smart guy.
Yeah, he was a very smart guy. And what about Smedley Butler?
Yes. And Smedley Butler, of course, very, very correct in what he understood and what he did and what he wrote about, at least in the 30s. He was part of the machine earlier than that. He was a part of the military empire, and he did what he was told. He followed orders, and then he realized what it was all about and how it worked, and he wrote about that. And he was quite the radical in his day when he came out, and yet today we can look at what he said and we'll go, oh yeah, sure. Everybody knows it works that way.
Yeah. You think, Karen, let he who has to fight the battle decide a nation, whether a nation goes to war or not. Okay, Karen, thank you. Karen Kwiatkowski for Congress. That's Karen K for Congress.com. Thank you. Up next, Popeye and Down the Rabbit Hole here at the Ryan Talk Radio Network.